Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Thanks so much for joining us today. Today we have a new guest. I don't mean to put you on the spot, I'm just playing. Today is a very special day. We're going to be talking about the modern Black Revolution and comparing it to the old revolution in the 60s and 70s, more specifically. But today I want to do as we always do is go around and give introductions. So we can begin with Angel and go around.
Alrighty. Hello, my name is Angel. I am a entrepreneur, a proud member of the spiritual community, Manumi. I am uh, a mommy and an artist. And those are my main occupations. Nice to meet everyone.
Great, great, great.
My next?
Jada? Yes, you're next.
Okay. I'm Jada. I'm a TikToker, mostly focused on pro-Black content. New Yorker, 24 years old. It's nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Danielle LaVergo. My main platform would be TikTok and YouTube, and I'm also on Instagram under that same name. And my platform is The Goddess Journey. And I essentially come from look at life, women, and how we can improve on our life and empower ourselves, and ultimately create the life that we want through truth and through, smart decision making. So you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at Daniela Virgo. So, yeah. And my Goddess Journey Patreon as well.
Yes, yes. I have the links in the description. So if you guys want to connect with anyone on the panel, you can definitely do that. Jada, I need some of your links. I didn't get a chance to get them beforehand, but I will definitely put it in as soon as you send it to me. Okay. So I want people to be able to feel free, take advantage of these services. Okay. But let's jump right in. So today, we was actually having a discussion the other day, me and Angel and a few others on Bigo, and we were talking about why we haven't reached liberation, right? And one of the things that I feel, and what I said was, I feel like the difference between the 70s and now is that, people don't have the same convictions. They don't have the same energy. I feel like now when we look at revolution, I feel like people are very lax, very complacent in the society that they live in. I feel like people are more ready to withhold their funds from a particular company in honor of boycott or solidarity than they are about actually doing something that will cause them to make a particular sacrifice of comfortability in their life. So I feel like that's a major thing that I think is missing from people of today, rather than people from back then. So you guys can tell me your thoughts, if you agree, if you disagree, if you think there's a different, if you have a different take. So anybody can go, really.
I definitely agree. I agree with that. I think it's really multi-layered the way that I see it. I feel like when it comes to the 60s and 70s and, even the 50s, the fight was different for sure. I think our fight is definitely more mental. And I feel that is what is really the issue, that realistically, being descendant of enslaved people, there's a psychological hold that I think is something that needs to be addressed first and foremost. And I feel like a lot of times we're kind of still in a place of being similar to the 60s, where it was more about physical. It was more about literal survival, resources, what's in front of you and what tomorrow is going to look like. But I think these days we have to focus more on a mental state. And I think that it's really hard for people to get to a place of understanding what the individual mental work looks like, because we know what the physical work looks like, and our ancestors have done that, but we don't know what the mental work looks like.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
I certainly agree. Certainly agree. I also think like a huge part of it, from what I've seen, is that it seems to me like race hasn't been centralized the way that it was back then. Like I think now the oppression is a lot more class based, to where if you're within a certain income level, you're kind of in the position that a slave would be in, not necessarily in a sense of being brutalized, which plays into what she was saying about it being less physical, but in a sense of being trapped into a system where you're working to fulfill somebody else's dreams and goals, and you kind of have no choice but to do it or you're going to starve. And then the way that the economy is set up right now, even if you do go to work and you're a great employee and you spend most of your life working at this company, you still may not be able to pay your rent. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of elements. I do think that systematic racism is still a thing, right? So I don't want to say that it's null and void, but I do agree with her that a lot has transferred over to more of a mental state. And I'll just end on saying that I do think that it could be a part of the oppressors just being smarter and realizing that it's a lot easier to force people into submission when they don't realize they're being forced, right? So yeah.
Well, I would say I definitely agree that it's more mental now, but ultimately I come from a perspective of a little esoteric, a little, high consciousness, so a little outside of the, for lack of a better phrase, 3D, right? I try to hit things at different levels. Um, and so I definitely agree that is the differences between maybe the 60s and 70s now is more like you, or even from slavery and everything in the 60s and 70s too. I guess it was physical because there was still segregation and stuff like that. After was um no longer technically legal, that didn't mean everybody immediately integrated or whatever. But ultimately I believe that that earth, us, everything are cycles, different version of the same stuff over and over and over again, until you can either pull yourself out of it to some degree, right? We're still human in, Black bodies. We're still in whatever race, ethnicity, nationality body you are in, right? So there is always a level of, the 3D that's necessary. There's a level of, humanness that's necessary, but also, because I fundamentally believe that it's a cycle, like in the 60s and 70s, there was well, let me go back a little bit. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if y'all know anything more detailed than this, but like, let's take like the 40s and the 50s, right? They going through pressing their hair and things like that. The Temptations, fried, dyed, laid to the side. By the time the 70s come, so we're 20, 30 years later. By the time the 70s come, we're in the natural hair movement again. Everybody's wearing afros, everybody's but then by the time, and for some people around 70s, 80s, 90s, but then for others, the 90s start ushering back in the relaxers and straight hair. And that's like what, a few years later, 2010s, natural hair come booming. Now we're back in relaxers and straightening and silk pressing, right? So in a cycle. So I don't think it's that things ultimately change, they just look different. I think different, you have to, the way humans are conditioned and coded, they to maintain some sort of order, they have to make things look differently, as one of y'all said before, so that you can't clock it as clearly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that they change it from, you know, very physical, you can't drink out of the water fountain we drink, we can't use the same bathrooms, to yeah, you can be here, we can share spaces, but I'm always going to police you, I'm always going to be watching you, you know. So then that's where, yes, they can't physically police our bodies. In some ways they physically do, but part is more in here.
Right.
Ultimately, I believe us as individuals have to also, you know, realize that people have to want to break out of certain cycles. And fundamentally, and this is going to be my last statement, I'm gonna shut up. But fundamentally, I think that, you know, a lot of people, even Black people, are comfortable where they are. So that's why, for a myriad of reasons, but this is why ultimately I believe it's not really different. It's the same, just a different version of it. We have to add it in cell phones and adding in technology. It's going to be even more of a mental thing for us to like come across or free ourselves from. So
Right, right. And that actually brings me to a question, right? Because I feel like the way in which we address the problem as a collective, right? I think there's always divisions on how we see the problem, and that then, you know, produces a different outcome as to how we attack the problem, right? How we all approach it. So I feel like one division that I saw in around like the 60s and 70s was people feeling like if they just had the right amount of money, or if they got into the right class, right? Which is why then the whole Black excellence thing came into play, right? And you know, the boule or fraternities, and like basically the acceptance of us in white spaces made us feel like we were more liberated, we're more accepted as human beings. You know, so my question to y'all is just defining the revolution, like ultimately defining it, right? Is liberation one where we live in a country where the oppressors, right, or the ones who are in rulership, right, see us as human beings and treat us as such and give us equal rights and actually see us as people, right? Is that liberation? Or is liberation one where we have the ability to separate ourselves and not be targeted, right? Where we can make our own Black Wall Street and it won't be burned down, where we can have our own businesses, where we can you know, do things where we can create our own cultures, religions, societies, and we're not being bombarded, right? So which one is really the solution that we really want to get to?
That's a really good question. I have to deep that for a second.
Yeah, no, because I feel like there's the mentality that I think our people still grapple with, because this is not an old mentality that we got rid of. I think it's still there. I think the fact that a lot of I hear from Black men like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire, right? They feel like being rebellious against the system is not working a 9 to 5 and then coming up with their own business and then becoming a millionaire so that they can experience the same freedoms and luxuries as, you know, Caucasian people, and being able to live in that world and being like, okay, that's freedom, right? And then on the other hand, we have different people who are just like, that's not freedom. That's just proximity to whiteness, or just feeling like you want to be you just want to be liked by them. Like, why do you want to be liked by the oppressor? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I personally feel like I want to be left alone, not really liked, because you can't make someone like you. You can't make someone value you as a person or be able to see your divinity just because you are also God on this planet. But people are going to have their biases. They're going to have their prejudices, which is going to go through their genetics and even in their children, which is why we still have issues with Caucasians today. Even if they think they're not racist, they don't even know, because it's in their DNA, right? Just like we pass down trauma, they pass down their prejudices and biases, right? So in general, you know, I feel like for us as a people, the way for us to really have a successful revolution, I think we have to, at the very beginning, agree. You know what I mean? We have to agree at the very least on what that looks like. So there's half of us trying to make as much money as possible so that we can feel like they see us as people and we can live the life of luxury or whatever. And you know, with money comes opportunities and freedom and things like that. But also, can we create our own economic system with our own money and have our own ancestors on our bills? Can you know what I mean? If that's what we want to do, I would like that personally, you know, but we have to at least agree on a thing, because then it depends on how we approach. Are we all gonna start trying to make as much money as possible, or are we all gonna create a sovereign nation? So we kind of have to figure that out.
I think it's interesting because I actually just made a video to say, like, literally saying that exact thing about people kind of just being more concerned with the dignity and reputation of, like, wanting to move away from the idea of anti-Blackness than actually seek true liberation. I think the issue a lot of times, though, is the fact that I don't think people understand the American financial system, truly. I don't think people really understand how it works, the layers that go into it, imperialization, colonization, how all those things intersect. And I think that was kind of the point that I was making in my video, is like the intersection of all these different systems is what keeps everybody, like not even just Black people, in a place of not being able to really see what exactly is the problem and how to get liberated. And I think that there are ways that I think that making money can be beneficial to the community, but I don't see it as the fundamental key to liberation. I think that there are so many, like I said, mental things, educational, like understanding the financial system, understanding how these things work, that would be necessary for us to utilize money in a way to gain true liberation. And I just think that a lot of times it's kind of like Danielle was saying, I like to pull into the spiritual as well. The energy that money is, the way that it works, the way that it works when you are commodified as a people, like literally Black people were a commodity, the way that you view money when you were money, like your people were a commodity, the way that the system works in relation to anti-Blackness, the way that the financial system works in relation to anti-Blackness, I think it's really hard to balance going through that system to seek liberation. But at the same time, it could be beneficial. Like if people are strategic about it. And I mean, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if y'all saw Sinners recently.
Yeah, I didn't watch it yet, so don't
no spoilers then. Sorry. No, but without any spoilers, there's just a pivotal moment where like money comes into play, and one twin is on one side and one twin is on the other side, and there's kind of this theme of rejecting like American money throughout the film. And I think it's a similar thing that we're faced with right now, where it's like, if we're going to continue to prioritize the American dollar, then that means that you're pretty much telling your people you need to go work for them. And if we're going to keep telling our people that we need to go work for them and that we can't rely on our community, we can't seek resources in our community, then it's going to be really hard for us to all be liberated. And I think that is, in my opinion, the main problem, is that people are kind of just focused on their own individual liberation, but it's not liberation if everybody's not liberated.
Thank you. No, that's a big thing that I talk about all the time. The individualism, right? Everyone is I, me, my personal family, right? And I think that is a big problem when it comes to collective liberation. I think not enough people even have the mindset of collective, but also that's also the reason why I draw a big parallel between the 70s and now, right? So I see things like Black Panthers and stuff like that. I'm just like, well, there has been more of, you know, like a situation where it's like, okay, let's do this for the community. Like while people are still coming out with nonprofits and doing things, I just feel like that the part that's missing is unity, right? Individuals are coming out with, oh, I want to serve the community, but can we do it together is my question.
So I kind of struggle with this a little bit because I ultimately believe that the solution is community, but I can't help to, like when you have a certain level of understanding about how humanity and how things work, you kind of understand why it never worked and why it's not. So although I believe community is the solution, I believe that ultimately community would have to be small pockets at a time.
Okay.
How you allow other people to either catch on if they so should choose. I believe in free. So at no point would I ever try to force all Black people or all Black women or whomever to do anything. So if realistically, it's not gonna happen. Because just the way humans are designed, we're designed to be pack animals, but we also have a lot of obstacles put in our way that creates competition and, and patriarchy and money, just like you said earlier, the energy of money. It's a lot of moving parts. Systems of oppression are all connected. So it's also difficult for me to strictly focus on the Black community specifically, because all systems I can't pretend that Black oppression is the worst oppression that exists in America, because it's not, in my opinion. It's just not. So, and like understanding that all of these systems are connected and by design, between the human design and the design and intention and point of that system and those systems, nobody is free unless everybody is free. There will be no world where Black people are free and liberated. There can be a world where certain Black people are free and liberated. And by everyone, I don't mean every single individual, but I mean majority of people. Because people are also designed, just not to make this about gender, but men alone are designed to sort of want things outside of their community, right? They want to explore things. And although women are too, but when you see the past, you see the patterns of the past, you can predict the future. So that's why I believe that it would be pockets. We would be better off getting pockets. So a version of individualism, but just not necessarily me, and my immediate family or my
tribalism, like how the Native Americans lived before colonization,
Yeah. And the idea of like a separate nation, like Black people in a separate nation, what it would take to get there, I don't know how much of my energy I would use to do that, because I think that the majority of people would be willing to do what's necessary. In my opinion, you would either have to get violent, as much as we have seen Black people be in history, as we've seen Black people be sort of sovereign, but it's not really sovereignty if you're under the United States government. At least if you have your own banks, you have your own hospitals, when there was a time when Black people had that, it eventually left. I don't think, especially the men in any race or ethnicity, would be, because just like when they were doing the civil rights movement, what were Black men wanting? They were wanting to marry outside of their race. White men, what were they? To dibble and dabble with women outside of their race, with their slaves, with men, right? So that's natural to them. So like in that like lens, I would find it difficult to believe that the average human would want to actually be segregated fully. I think a lot of us are segregated. I have no white friends and I don't want any. So, but then it's levels to segregation. So ultimately, I think the solution is individualism. But if you're able to, individuals end up a collective. So if individuals can be on the same page, you can't expect, it's unrealistic to expect Black people to wake up like a light switch and everybody be on the same page. That's not going to happen. So
Right.
I think there is a collective conscious. Just us being here is proof of that. I think that there's a collective energy of races of everyone, meaning Black people can absolutely do it, and so can everyone else. That people are no longer feeling 9-to-5 culture. They don't want to work 40, 60, 80 hours a week. They don't want to, they want to grow their own food. All the is that we love, and that kind of keeps us away from the things we actually want, like Amazon and Target and all of these different pickups, things that make our lives easier. We got to get rid of all of that. How many people are willing to get rid of all of that? So ultimately, we would have to focus on self, focus on building community, and community and self does not mean your immediate family, because your parents might not want to join in your community, so that's pretty much what I think.
Yeah. I think tribalism, I think, makes the most sense out of what you just said. So people who are of like-minded coming together, it may not be your relatives, it may not be, everybody in your family, but if you can find people that's like-minded, you should definitely come together with them and then see what you can do from there. But I think the biggest thing is getting people on the same page, like you said, everybody's not going to wake up tomorrow and think the same way. Just like we were talking about segregation, some people are happy with some of the new things that's happening with Trump, like introducing the idea of segregation, or you being able to, choose who you want in your business and be able to discriminate according to race and all that. There are some people who believe with the original I have a dream, integration. So again, I think the biggest obstacle that we have when it comes to us thinking about like revolution, again, it comes to defining that, but we have to get on the same page of what that looks like. Like, what does that look like? Whether you are spiritual, conscious, elevated, or whether you're just not, and you just, you just don't know where you're going in life, just trying to figure it out. So I think we have to kind of define that.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on that because I know that you mentioned that the first step of the revolution is deciding what the revolution should actually look like. And I do think, like, when you pointed out that a lot of people feel like autonomy is getting to a point within the system that you've made so much money that a lot of those classist type things that I was speaking about earlier don't apply to you. And so I feel like that's a big part of what I was saying, where the oppressors have gotten smart enough to make people think that they're not being forced to participate in the system, because people will have the mentality, like you said, of I'm just trying to grind to get to the top, right? And making it to the top is the focus, rather than completely separating themselves from a system where they have to kill themselves making it to the top. So I definitely think that the solution is to create environments where we are truly autonomous, meaning we are able to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, protect ourselves without depending upon a system that does not have our best interests at heart. So yeah, I definitely think that the solution is whether people want to call it tribing up, nation building, or I've been trying to make culture cultivating a thing, has been taken off, but that's what I think the solution is, personally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think whether you want to create autonomous spaces or you want to grind to get to the top, I feel like the one thing that is required for both avenues is sacrifice, right? Because I think I mentioned it before. Like, if anybody feels like they want to become a millionaire or a billionaire in this society, what you're going to be sacrificing is your social relationships, right? You may not be friends with everybody. Everybody's not going to like you because of the things that you have to do to, you basically, if you're going to play the game, you have to play it. Like, you know what I mean? You have to play it to win. So that means you're going to be sacrificing yourself, possibly some morals or principles that you may have had growing up or whatever. You know, your spirituality may be questioned. You know what I mean? I feel like if you're going to make autonomous spaces, then what you would have to sacrifice is just like what Danielle said, all the comforts and things that comes with this society, right? So you would have to give up all the things that come with the system of money and all the convenience and all the Amazons and the Uber Eats. You know, I'm a little attached to Uber Eats. So, you know, just different things where it's like we kind of have to choose our battle. And I understand how people could just live in the delusion of, well, I'm free because I'm not getting beat on every day and no one's telling me to, you know, I'm not no one's slave for real. But in general, I feel we are all mental slaves because we live in a state of dependency and we really don't have a choice. We really don't truly have a choice with anything. We don't have a choice with the quality of our food. We don't have a choice with where we live. We don't have a choice with who runs the country. To be honest, don't talk to me about voting, please. Okay, we don't have a choice with a lot of things, right? We are playing a game of what we can do, where we can go, who we can be with, based upon settings that has been made by someone who doesn't care about us, right? They decide where we're going to live based on how they're going to market the specific area, right? How much it is, how much minimum wage is, how much we're worth, you know, when we work, what jobs we're going to get. Like, so in general, everything is decided for us. And I think the one thing that we all should agree on, right? Everyone in America, we all should be able to agree that we have no control. At the end of the day, we have no control. And that also means we have no control in our relationships too, because we're only going to get with people who are in proximity to us, which means if we're in an impoverished space, we're going to have someone who else is impoverished, which means we're going to have the same struggles, which means we may act upon what is holding us down, right? So in general, we're going to continue to have broken families and, you know, trauma in our households because everybody is living off of survival mode, right? So in general, a lot of our lives, our life experience in this realm is depicted by somebody else. And I think that should be something that motivates us to do something no matter how much sacrifice it requires. You know what I mean? Because you should, in my opinion, you should feel strongly about that. You should want autonomy, not the illusion of it. Like, oh, you can choose your president. Oh, you can choose what you eat when you go to the supermarket and pay this much money I told you to pay. Like, you know what I'm saying? like, oh, you know, you can be whatever you want in life if you go to the schools I told you can go to because of your district. Like, you have to go to these schools specifically, or these schools because they're free, or like, again, I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but I just feel like
No, preaching, you preach.
I'm sorry, this is one of the things I'm just so like passionate about. Like I'm getting hot. Okay. So again, it's just like I feel that those of us who feel like we're free, which is why I don't believe in Juneteenth, because people be like, oh, Independence Day. I'm like, independent from what? What are we really independent from? Technically, if you really think about it, you know, maybe I'm just too deep. But what you said?
I said clock it.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's just like we have to first, before we can choose the revolutionary path, because I think we have great ideas, so you guys so much, but we have to agree that we're not free. First of all, I think a lot of us don't agree there. You know, we have so much liberties where other countries can kind of look at Americans and think we're obese and lazy, and we have so much, like, you know what I mean? So our oppression is pretty, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But just because we dress it up and make the best of our lives, because that's just what we do. We're innovative. We know how to make the best of anything, which is why back in the day, slaves knew how to make things out of scraps like pig feet and all that. Like, the reason why we are great is because we are great. We're creators. We're innovators. That's what we do. But that doesn't mean we should just live in that delusion. You know what I mean? We should still be able to see, well, I'm making the best of what I can, but that's not good enough for me. Like, I want to be able to be a creator of my life, and I want my children to be able to run the streets free, because I know that my neighbor has an eye on them just like I have an eye on their children, right? So these are the simple standards of life that I think everybody should have, like liberty for all. That's not a lot to be asking for, I don't think. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. Everything you're saying, it reminds me of a video I saw probably years ago at this point. And I feel like it kind of connects and finishes your point of like, she was talking about animal liberation and how important that is for humans. Because I think when you start to talk about animal liberation, it kind of shows the condition that we are in as living things to kind of subjugate people. Like, that's an animal. So it doesn't matter if I kill that animal and I eat that animal.
Right.
I want to do that, and it just is what it is, and they don't have the right to stop me. I feel like it's those fundamental things in our society that are long, like, I'm talking centuries ago. I also think about the fact that, like, most people who are alive right now, especially like you think white Americans, they are descendants of serfs, peasants, people that were escaping monarchy in Europe. You think of Black Americans, we are descendants of people who were enslaved for centuries. Like, the part of your mind that can live comfortably with the power of your mind is like chained. Like, the power of the mind is such an important thing, and I think that a lot of our society is centered around teaching you and showing you not to consider the power of your mind. I think that's what, like, institutionalization is. That is what jail is for. That is what the military is about. That is what school is about. It's all about that little voice in your head that tells you that you deserve what you deserve, or that you deserve what you want. You're not supposed to listen to that. That's what slavery teaches you. You're a slave. That voice in your mind does not supersede that of your master. Like, you're not supposed to listen to yourself. And that's why I always say the mental part is so important in the conversation of revolution, because it's like, that's why they always say, the revolution is not going to be televised because it starts in the mind, because it's like the first thing you have to realize is that you absolutely have the right to whatever it is you want, not just the choices that they give you, like you were saying. And I think that a lot of people don't feel the comfort. I mean, I see it in my life, growing up, my family. It's the norm of our society to be conditioned to seek validation through the better choice, the better of two evils. I'm going to just go with the thing that looks good. My neighbors aren't going to say anything bad about me. I'm going to get pat on the back if I go and do this thing because it looks good. And I'm just going to do that. But is that really what you want to do? Like, that never comes into play. And that's why I think, like, identity and the mental aspect is first and foremost. Like, it's almost like a slave mentality upon humans. Like, we all are answering to a monarch at the end of the day, and we don't even realize it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I want to get into is, now that we have all agreed that we're not free, right? And that it takes mental power, right, to be able to see that you're not free. I think the next step after that is, how do we help our people see the reality, right? And get out of the delusion. I feel like one of the roads that I'm taking personally is teaching classes, making sure that people return to their original way of thinking, the original worldview, right? So I teach from the perspective of pre-colonization, nature, religion, female principle as your guiding light of how you enter the world, because it gets you to a point of cooperation being a part of your major principles, community, empathy, compassion, all those things being your divine guidance, right? And that should help you navigate through life, right? That should help you navigate through life. But also, I want to get to or ask you guys, what is the thing that can help us at the very least get on the same page with the majority, I should say, because it won't be everybody, obviously, but the majority.
I think definitely mindset work. Like definitely like the mental stuff, raising your consciousness, knowledge, learning. Because a lot of what majority of people suffer from is ignorance. So
Mm-hmm.
the more information you have, the more you'll be able to understand, the more you'll be able to adjust your worldview, you'll be able to adjust your perception, because you will have a deeper understanding of things. And then ultimately you'll be able to make choices that will contribute to your freedom and contribute to your autonomy and contribute to your sovereignty. That, however, takes a lot of responsibility. And I think that the majority of people are comfortable for one reason or another in this system, because like you was mentioning earlier, you'll just continue to have, not that I believe in nuclear family, because I don't believe that's the ultimate solution, but
Right.
in a world that's set up like this, I was going to say like it's probably best to go that route because of the way it's set up, but at the same time it's still ultimately not a solution. But what's definitely not a solution is, raising children by yourself, where you're struggling and your children are struggling and you're, giving them a super late start. Um, but ultimately, it's gonna take people fixing this and fixing
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
because because the one thing that I have, learned personally on my own journey is people have to want to learn. They have to want to know. They have to want to grow. The ability to just have children and then have social safety nets also contribute to the reason why people are so comfortable within the system. Because if you do put yourself into a village system, a tribal system where you're autonomous, you have to start considering the village in
Mm-hmm.
everything, in every decision that you make. You can no longer operate as an individual, for an example, and pop out as many babies as you can stand when the village have to pick up the pieces because there is no government giving you benefits in any sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes for everybody, not just Black people. This because we already know we're not the main ones who need assistance. But it comes a lot of responsibility, and it's a whole entire mindset shift that what has to happen for people to be able to get there. And I think people are definitely getting there, and people are definitely like rewiring the way we've been conditioned. And because time is speeding up, it's happening fast, we would like it to be a little faster, people to get on the same page a little faster, but yeah, it's going to ultimately come down to people's desire to want things differently more than they want things to be the way that they are now. So
Right. Yeah, that actually brings me to one of the questions, right? Because we're talking about doing work, self-work, spiritual work, coming into, wanting something different. It says here, is the spiritual awakening in the Black community revolutionary in itself? Right? So let's say, looking at the revolution or the end of what that looks like, if we all return back to our spiritual system before the Abrahamic religions, right? Would that be in itself a successful revolution? And would we be happy with that?
Personally, I would say no. Like, I don't think that's sufficient enough. Um, just because I think that a spiritual system is only one part of what it takes to be autonomous. Like, I think that all of the other factors that we talked about here could remain the exact same. We could still be completely dependent upon the system. We could still be stricken with poverty, dysfunction, all this stuff, but just be, I don't know, worshiping my aunt instead of Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't think that's a solution. In fact, I damn
Yeah.
near think that shit is slowing the revolution down, because I feel like, because we have so many different people that are trying to go back to the old ways. But that's the thing. There's so many different spiritual practices and religions. Just pick one. From thousands of years back to the beginning of mankind. So now you have all these different little groups of factions that are like, no, we're the real Israelites. No, we're this. No, we're that. No, we're this. Now we're that. And then we're not getting shit done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I think that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that ultimately it does come down to a place of like, you know, the idea of like a one consciousness does start to come into play when you have these conversations, because we do have to get to a point where we recognize that like even tribalism and even the separation of people by religion and the separation of people by nation and all of these things contribute to the very systems of oppression that we live in. This idea that somebody is other than me for any reason when we're all human is kind of what sets the standard for all of the different systems of oppression that have been created ever since. That's why I think that the practical step would not necessarily be, I think that a spiritual thing would be something more specific to each people, you know, like an individual thing. But I think that the, lost my train of thought a little bit reading that comment.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. What was I about to say? Give me 1 second. Oh, I think that more so, at least in America or in Western countries, I think a practical step would just be not necessarily always wanting to reach back into a past, but who we are now and embracing that fully. Like, even with small things like, to bring up Sinners again, watching Ryan Coogler go on a press tour, and he has this thick Oakland accent and he has a stutter, and he's, you know, this black man that speaks in this very specific way that isn't technically seen as the, you know, media trained way, you know, little things like that of like just saying I am who I am and I don't need to conform for any reason to be valuable. I don't need to change the way that I speak or walk or talk or dress. I think that would be like a very first step. And that's what I kind of prioritize in my TikTok, is kind of always trying to remind people, like, you know, you don't have to follow those rules, right? Like, you don't have to act like that and talk like that and code switch like that and do what these people are telling you to do. Like, I think that's the moment for people where they realize, oh, and I feel like it's also why art and revolution and Renaissance are always so tied to each other, because art is fundamentally that thing that pushes boundaries on what people think is considerable. So when it comes to film, when it comes to music, when it comes to different art forms that depict to people in visual or audio ways that like you can do something new, you can create something with what you have right now that hasn't been seen before, because any religion or spiritual practice that we would reach back to was cultivated through new ideas that formed and came together. So I think that like wanting to push forward is something that I think is really important for us. Like, not feeling like there's a blueprint, but that we are currently the blueprint and our current desires are what can move us forward.
Right. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. I thought I pressed it. But I wanted to say briefly along the lines of the spirituality. I think spirituality exists for humans as a reminder that we are divine and we are directly connected to source, and that we have the capability to control ourselves, our minds, our bodies, you know, through our higher self. For me, anything outside of that when you start adding in tradition, no matter what, like y'all were saying, no matter what spiritual practice or religious practice you swap for that, if you do too much, it's going to end up in the same result. So it's definitely not a solution, because you have to constantly balance between being a human and then being tapped into your, higher self, being tapped into your spirituality. But then as a human, you can't do too much. The way you're wired, the conditions that we're in as humans, you can't go too far down the religious or even spiritual sector. So the idea of going, if spirituality itself, old practices were the only solution, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be where we are. So you obviously can't do the same thing that you already did if you plan on getting, so you have to do something different. And that's where, for me, like mindset work come in and knowledge come in, and elevating yourself spiritually and getting yourself in alignment so that you operate differently through your mind. You can control your physical body through your mind. Like, I'm a certified yoga instructor. And so, of course, I do yoga and have to do breath work and stuff like that. So I work on breath work, and that enables me to control my heart rate. It enables me to control my physical body, whether I have a stomach ache or I have back pain, if I can focus, So spirituality is wonderful in doses. The same way, I think religion is silly, but people need it. Some
Yeah.
people need it. Some people are not, like Black women in general are already, and men as well, but of course more so women are more tapped in a bit spiritually. So we don't need the confinements of rules for us to keep ourselves together, for us to not harm people. We don't need someone over our shoulder saying, don't get violent, don't just start like, we can regulate our emotions better. So for some people, they need religion, they need traditions, they need law. I think men need it more than women do, but women participate more than men do because women are naturally spiritual, so it's easy to shift into that. But spirituality alone is never going to be the solution, because if it was, this would not have become our problem in the first place. So it's not a solution by itself, but definitely balancing between those things so that you're connected, so that you know who you are, and you continue to align yourself, but while also being practical, really. And this is something that I really work on, because I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm very in the clouds, and I'm very woo woo, and I have to, like, take a break. So I'm speaking to more people that are like that, who I can send myself into spiritual psychosis if I do too much.
Right.
So I have to know and have tools to, like, be like, all right, girl, go outside, do something else. Don't, at the end of the day, you're still a human, so you have to deal with human things. So that kind of balance between those things. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everybody. I feel like spirituality is just one of those things that keeps you guided, right? It's that light for you to remember, like, okay, there's balance in everything, right? Especially if you understand who you are in this world. So it should keep you balanced out. So grounded and spiritual at the same time. So absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to touch on the thing that Jada mentioned earlier about sinners, right? And I want to get into the impact of media, music, and art, right? And the question is, how is music and other forms of media shaping the consciousness of this generation? Are today's artists freedom fighters or brand ambassadors? I have to bring it up because I am a big, like, hip hop lover. Like, you know what I mean? It was birthed in New York. You know what I'm saying? So I love music. I love movies. I love it all. So we know that it does have an impact on our subconscious. So I just want to ask you guys, how do you feel it's affecting our consciousness today?
How we feel what is affecting our consciousness today?
Music, media, and art. All the things that we have right now.
Okay. Okay. Um, I think it's affecting it the way it always has, which is I think that I think it starts off innocent enough as people create these forms of multimedia in order to express themselves. But then it kind of becomes a culture in of itself, I think. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, I might be someone who is from an impoverished environment and I create music to express how I feel about that. But then somebody else listens to that music from the suburbs, but you know, they think it's fire or whatever. And so they start trying to emulate what they're seeing, even though it's not their experience. And then they wind up recreating it. So I'm not saying that's the case with everybody, but I don't know. I think that's the biggest way that it's affecting our current consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's just allowing almost anyone with a decent voice and a melody to influence um, what our collective consciousness vibrates around, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does. Yeah, I think we sort of mentioned some of this in one of our previous panels where we spoke about movies and Black love and how the love interest is always portrayed, being of a certain ethnicity or having a certain phenotype. I think, right now, the one thing that people are speaking most about is Tyler Perry movies and how we always see a woman going through the absolute worst before she finds some particular love at the end. So I think in general, you know, what I feel personally is that we had better representation of family. When I think about something like The Cosby Show or A Different World, which I'm rewatching right now, or, just different things, or Family Matters, things like that, where we can see women who are dark skinned, being portrayed, being, loved on properly, and it's not so toxic, right? I think the way in which we go through life, it is based off of what we think is normal, right? So if we see on TV, women getting beat or hurt or whatever, and then we go into our real lives and we also see that happening, us growing up, we're also going to think that that's just life. So same thing with music. Our young people can grow up looking at different things, and young girls can be influenced by video vixens, or the young boys can be influenced by music artists who are speaking about drugs, money, and sex all the time, showing cars and jewelry and things of that nature, knowing what I know now, which is that most rappers are broke. Most movie stars don't have a lot of money either. So the things that I grew up thinking, oh, these people got it. They don't have it. But they portray this particular lifestyle. And I think that contributes to the desire for a lot of our people to want to get that financial freedom, thinking that that's an answer. I think that really impacts our psyche, thinking that, money or being a millionaire is going to really solve a lot of our problems, get us out of the ghetto, therefore giving us more opportunities, therefore creating safe environments for us to raise kids. You know what I mean? I think it has a lot to do with our media. We watch on TV, what we see in music videos. And maybe if there was more conscious music, right? Some more talking about, how to regulate your emotions. You know what I mean? Then we can see a difference in the masses of people where they actually want to prioritize, their well-being, if that was popular within the music.
Yeah, I think music is frequency, of course. So music
Mm-hmm.
has frequency and repetition. So
Mm-hmm.
music has a strong ability to along with TV programming, that's why it's called a program, has a strong ability to shape and frame the way you see yourself, the way you see the world, the way you see everything. And
Mhm.
so it's a matter, and like you, I'm very attached to the nostalgia of like 90s R&B and 90s hip
Yeah.
hop and
Yeah.
knowing every lyric to a Biggie song, right? But then we're quickly realizing like our whole childhoods and our whole existence is being turned upside down. At this
It is.
point, I'm just whatever, bro. Like, I don't
Yeah.
believe nothing. I don't like everything is a lie. Forget about it. Nothing matters. But like you, like I have a hard time breaking away, but I'm very particular about what I consume now. Like I'm very particular about the songs that I listen to, or the like now I can listen to the same song. I'm like, damn, I didn't hear this before. Like,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
have a hard time. So I try to personally be more careful about what I intake and what I listen to and all of those things because it is programming. I try to, watch less movies and TV unless I feel like it's meaningful, or I
Mhm.
feel like it's something worthy of decoding or something like that, because they also put a lot into TV. They
Yeah.
put a lot because that's a part of universal law. If they're going to lie to us and they're going to like control us and they're going to like do all those things, they, to tell a lie, you have to tell the truth. The only thing the
Right.
universe cares about is maintaining balance and order. So it doesn't
Mhm.
really matter. The lie, that's not good or bad. The truth is not good or bad. It just is. So they put a lot, they have to show us certain things, like you were mentioning, voting, right? If
Mhm.
you participate in voting, you consent to the system. And
Mhm.
I get it for people that want to participate and people that have faith in that system. But the one thing we collectively know is it does not work. It hasn't worked yet. At what point has it worked? So continue to participate in it. Is your consent. Voting is you consenting to them doing whatever they want to do, whether the person that you want to be in there win or not. At some point, we have to make a decision. You have to decide to not be a fence rider anymore. And
Mhm.
so a part of that, I think music play a big part in keeping the vibration low or keeping the vibration high. Of course, in terms of like controlling humanity is going to be low, but you have to be careful. Or at the very least, if you want to indulge in, nostalgic music or low vibrational music, know your own energy. So you know when you can absorb those kinds of things and it not, affect your sort of programming, the way you see the world, the way you see each other. Because a lot of us have believed lies that we were told about ourselves from music and from TVs and from movies
Mhm.
based off the amount that they pop. I had never met in all of my family, I've never met too many thugs the way you see on TV. It looks
Right.
very different in
Yeah.
real life than it does on TV. So it's definitely a way to control and maintain, but it also can be used to wake people up, just like the movie
Mhm.
Sinners. We're collectively on the same page about that. We're collectively gathering and getting the same messages about that. So the very things that they try to use to control us are the very things that we can also use once we're able to tap into ourselves and our own divinity and our own power. We can use those very things to turn ourselves around. Sometimes you might listen to low vibrational music if you got to do something low vibrational. But you need to know that that's when you need to do it. That doesn't need to be something that you consume 24/7. But music
Right.
is powerful. Frequency is powerful. It has the ability to alter your physical body. It has the ability to alter your thinking patterns, your operating manual. So we have to, once you learn those things, you definitely have to be careful. I think ignorance is bliss to a certain degree. And when you don't understand something, you're less at fault for that lack of knowledge, especially when you're a child. We're not talking about ignorance, because ignorance for an adults is to
Willful.
ignore, all ignorance is willful, because the etymology of that is to ignore something. So that means you had an opportunity. If you are ignorant, that means there's knowledge, everything exists every answer we want, everything exists. So if you choose to not tune in and get those answers, that's on you. Whatever that looks like for you, that's your own personal journey. No judgy over here. But ignorance, period, means to ignore something, which means you're actively choosing to not learn. The act of not gaining knowledge and learning and growing and keeping your mind open to absorb new information is willful ignorance. It's you
Yeah.
are, yeah. So, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with everyone. Just to add on, I feel like my particular way of viewing it is that it's because of the fact that art is commodified. Like, art is a commodity. Art is something that people want to profit off of. Even the people that don't make art want to profit off of other people's ability to make art. And I feel like that's what I see as the problem, because the reality is art is going to exist in all forms of ways. You know, like, you're going to have Lauryn Hills and you're going to have Sexy Reds. That's the reality of humanity. I think it's the fact that art is a commodity is where then somebody goes and picks someone and says, I have an agenda, so I'm going to put you on the stage and not that other person.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's where we get lost and not recognizing that, like, that person with that message is always there. We just don't see them because they are not backed by Universal Records or something, you know? And I think just having the consciousness to know, like, what is this person's agenda? Because at the end of the day, these are a bunch of white old men in suits and rooms, and they don't really care about, you know, anybody but themselves and what they think is easily attachable to, especially for children. So I think it's like, a lot of times I like to pay a lot of attention to what's going on in art, whether I'm like vested in it myself or not, just to see, like, okay, where are y'all trying to put people's attention right now? What is it? What is the agenda that you're trying to move forward with putting this person in the place that you're putting them? And I think it's just like that awareness of how the commodification of art works, but still respecting art so that we can see all the reality of humanity that's happening through art. You know, like, we want to hear all those different points of views, but then also understand how people are puppeted based on the point of view that they're sharing.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I want to just move into is still in the realm of media, but also now social media, right? Because I think this is the one thing that's new, as far as back in the days, they didn't have social media, right? And they were still able to mobilize and, you know, organize marches and, you know, make programs and things like that. How has social media changed the way that we mobilize and organize today? And how are we using it effectively, or are we just venting into the void?
Girl, I know personally, I feel like most days, half the time, I feel like I'm venting into the void. I think that I honestly think that if social media, I think we rely too heavily on social media, you know, myself included, of course. If we had to come together in person, in actual community physically, it would take more effort, which means people would take it more seriously. If I could just roll up and, you know, walk through Target or roll up when I feel like it, when it's time for community, us to come together, minds to come together and make decisions, and I can half-ass and I can show up. I do it, right? I can show up when I feel like it. I can just get online and run my mouth and I can get, but nothing is actually behind it. If we had to put the effort into traveling, spending money to meet each other, even if it was on some secretive stuff, we would get more done, because it would, when you pay for something, when you pay for it via time, energy, whatever, you are going to do what you came there to do.
Right.
So like, if it, you know, that's the difference between paying $10 for something and $1,000 for something. If I pay $1,000, I'm going to go get my money's worth. I'm going to put the effort into whatever it is that I purchase, versus being able to heavily rely on social media. And then it becomes this, and the things going viral give us the illusion that it's actually helping and doing anything, but really it's not. You're attracting people that's like-minded, so other people aren't really growing, so it's like, I'm not to be, negative. I'm just, more look at it realistically. So then you can learn to how to put effort into using social media properly, because it does push it out to everybody in the world can see this video if they wanted to, right?
Right.
But at the same time, that's not enough. You have to need boots on the ground, being physical, and it sort of has given us the illusion of change. And social media can easily be manipulated. So this is something that I had been clocking on TikTok for a while. Like, for an example, TikTok is reshaping humans' cognitive abilities. I'm actually nervous about children, about not Gen X, not Gen X, Y, Z, not Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I'm
Oh,
actually nervous when they get older, because it's changed my attention span at my big age. It's
yes,
changed my
absolutely.
attention span. Like, I have to actively force myself to get off TikTok. Imagine what it's doing to a child who can't be cognizant of this. Plus, TikTok and social media are full of liars. Whether it's real people lying about what their life looked like, perpetrating, or social media. Because the one thing that I did notice about TikTok is that there's a lot of fake pages. There's a lot of real people, I believe, are three-letter government agencies, real people making up fake stories that tens of thousands of people are commenting on as if it's real. What does that do to your psyche? What does that do to your worldview? What does that do to the way you see the world and everybody else, right? It alters your mind. So TikTok is going to have a big, in about 2-3 years from now, we're going to start seeing how much TikTok has framed and shaped. Like, I came across a page where they were like, it's basically AI pictures, where the entire page was a page full of fake stories about police officers killing Black people, killing children, Black children specifically. A fake page with thousands, tens of thousands of followers, right? Which I don't believe majority of people, if they saw that page, you should be able to clock that it's fake, which means that TikTok also have the ability to force you to follow people that you didn't actually consent to follow. Instagram does this too. So social media is good in terms of reach, but in my opinion, at reach, and then I guess that's technically reach, is us like-minded people being able to come together. But that's about it. Other than that, it's like changing the trajectory of human programming. And we're going to see that, like, in real life. We already do technically, but in real life in a few years, because TikTok is social engineering, to put it shortly. It's socially engineering the entire world, and it's actually unnerving. But yeah.
No, absolutely. I feel like all of them are. Facebook, Instagram, they all run social experiments through these platforms, right? So everything is monitored, and they're judging based off of how we interact with the platform. They're now writing down notes of, oh, this is how they react in this space. Now they know how to, deal with us, or create a different situation. If they want a certain outcome, they're studying our behavior. You know what I mean? So again, it's all a part of the social experiment. I thought, I assumed most people kind of understood this already, but also just utilizing it for their own purposes, but also knowing like the broader machine behind the thing, So
yeah. And I don't say that to sound negative or to fear monger, right? Because the very thing that they use against us, at the end of the day, we're still actual human. We are still tapped into source. The very things that they try to use to control us, we can use to lie to them.
Exactly.
So if my algorithm, you can scrape through my phone, you can comb through my contacts, you can see what race I am, you can collect all the data that you want to collect. That will never be me. That is only a collection of data. So it's your ability to control me through my collection of data, through that collection of data, the higher my consciousness is, it's very slim, which is why they're not going to push things like this, because that wakes people up. So I'm not saying that for anyone to be fearful. It's for knowledge, because when you know that, you can control it. You can control what they see. They think they're controlling you, but you can use it against them, because now you got a bunch of stuff that's not even really me. You think that's me. You think that you know how to target add me, but you can't make me swipe my card. So when you know that, you can control it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big difference between the ruling class and everybody else is that they at least agree on something and they all collectively work towards that goal. And then they put in place strategies that they all work on. You know what I mean? To understand the opposition, right? To understand it and to be able to remain in control of it. So I think that's where we need to get to, like, you know what I mean, to the point where we understand how things are going and be able to at least agree on something so that we can be strategic and not be so at the whims of another, like, you know what I mean? So we have to at least get to a consensus. We don't have to agree on everything. Everybody's not supposed to mirror another. Like, we're not a monotonous people. We're very complex in general. So in general, we just have to get to a consensus of, this is not something that I want. This is not something that we like. So we should be able to be like, you know what? Collectively, we're not going to place our cards on these apps, or collectively, we're not going to put our race, or collectively, we're not going to track our periods in these apps, or collectively, like, you know what I mean? I feel like we should at least have a consensus of what it is that we're trying to achieve, and then apply a strategy, like, to combat, the people that's watching our every move and trying to understand us and trying to control us. We should actually be in that space where it's like, okay, let's do something about that.
Hey guys, my phone is about to die. Like, it's getting kind of
Oh,
low.
okay, yeah. And I know you're outside, so go ahead. You can definitely make your way home and everything, charge your phone, all that good stuff.
Okay. I know you said we're
Yeah.
supposed to be voting on something. Like, how long do you
Well,
think
it's again the vote that I wanted to do is I want to be able to, at the very least, have this conversation again next week to give other people a chance to come in and discuss, and then we can vote at the end of that. So the vote's not going to be today.
Okay.
Yeah. Just so
Alrighty.
everyone kind of understands what's going on, now that it's been said to the public. So guys, we're going to, we're having this discussion and we're going through the different parts of what would make a revolution, right? Dissecting the different parts of what act is revolutionary, what act isn't, whether it's, beneficial for us to act on it or not beneficial, if it's helping, if it's not helping, if it's effective, if it's not effective, right? And we're going through all those different things because at the end of it, we want to be able to get to that consensus that I just spoke about. We have to get to defining what the revolution is. We have to get to also choosing a possible solution or a set of strategies that we want to implement. And then we're going to vote at the end of that. And that's something that I want to make sure that all of the matriarchs have, their time to, chime in and be able to speak their piece. So I want to make sure that this is going to be a two-parter at the very least, to give everyone an opportunity to chime in on the subject. So, yeah. So I think from there, I think we spoke about a lot of different things, honestly, so far. We defined the revolution, if it's the same as from the 70s, right? We went into economics, sovereignty, right? We went into the digital age of resistance, social media. We went into music, art, you know what I mean? Spiritual reclamation, whether spirituality is the revolution or not, right? One of the things that I want to get into is revolution through family and healing, right? Can we have a revolution without healing the Black family? Now, that's a big question because I feel like in a lot of spaces, that is the biggest thing that I hear, especially from polygamists, right? A lot of men who may desire multiple wives, that is something that they preach about vehemently, right? And they talk about we have to heal the Black family, and that's how we get liberation, right? So I remember earlier, Danielle, you mentioned that you don't think the nuclear family is the solution, right? So what are you guys' idea of how the Black family can be healed? Like, what does that look like?
Community for me, I think, is the nuclear family. Granted, it may work for some people, but I don't think ultimately two people should be trapped taking care of children.
Mm-hmm.
Because what the nuclear family does is a tool of capitalism in order to box people into their individual little houses and their separate struggles. Everybody is silently struggling and everybody is having a hard time doing the most. We know that women end up doing majority of the housework, majority of the chores,
Mm-hmm.
majority of the child rearing, right? It does not work where it's equal and fair. You still need to be able to go out and date each other. Who's going to watch the kids? And I mean, while your children are
Right.
babies, right? When your children are young enough to where you don't want, you know, where you want people trustworthy to be able to be around your baby. I think that unfortunately, a lot of this is not going to work in of patriarchy due to male greed and male nature. Like I don't think that because fundamentally the way they they see women as indentured servants whose
Mm-hmm.
job is to birth babies because they have the parts, and that's asinine. So the nuclear family only works to benefit capitalism and to benefit corporations, because then you have to depend on Amazon, you have to depend on DoorDash, you have to depend on Target and Walmart and other stores, because you have to depend on fast food because there's not enough hours in the day to be a good parent, to work 40 hours a day or more. It's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't it doesn't work because you should be able to have family. So to me, what would work would be a village situation. What would work, but you also have to be trustworthy. You cannot trust men or women these days to watch your children, right? There,
Right.
that's that thing. So you have to gradually get there. I don't think that is going to be well received in patriarchy, just because patriarchy is derived from men. Men don't always understand how certain dynamics could run better without aggression or without overt authority and things of that nature. So I believe ultimately it should be a balance of those things, but the nuclear family, no, because it's too much for two people to handle, and we already know two people don't handle it. That one woman normally handles it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I feel like everybody knows my stance on that already. I feel like I don't believe in the nuclear family either. Again, I feel like the responsibility placed on those two people is, large and unrealistic, to be honest. I feel like the best way would be a polyandry type of family, one where the woman is centered, one where the safety of the children is centered. You know what I mean? There's always going to be a parent around. If anything happens to one father or whatever, there is another one there, so you don't have to worry about the woman being a single mother if something was to happen. So again, there's so many reasons, but I think it makes the most sense as polyandry was introduced in different societies that were in a similar situation when you do not have a lot of natural resources. when you are worried about the mortality rate of the children and the women, like I feel like the protection factor has to be prioritized. Again, this is something that would require people to deprogram from patriarchy. We know this, right? In order for the men to get out of their minds of portraying to be masculine according to, massa, right? So there's so much. It requires spiritual and conscious elevation of everyone within it. Everyone cannot be individualistic. You have to have the mind of the collective. You have to come into it with that community mindset, and everything that you do, understanding that your actions, it has an impact on the people in the community. It has an impact on other people, So in general, that's my personal, solution or option for people to take on as an ability to create their strength, pull resources together, start changing their mindset, putting them in situations where you are challenged to be better. You're challenged to work with other people. You're challenged to, cooperate and not have to do everything yourself. Like, you know what I mean? A lot of men complain about, oh, there's such a burden of life on me, and that's why I'm this way. Like, there's no more excuses for you to be a horrible human being, right? Because now you have to not think about yourself. Okay. So I think that's the most effective type of relationship that's going to grow the men and their psyche, the woman and her ability to care for a tribe of people, and the children who will have safety and security without the mom having to do everything. Because let's say one guy is at work, there could be another guy who's at home who just don't got a job, but he can help mom out with the dishes. You know what I mean? Just doing different things with the children, because we spoke about in one of the previous panels about the effects of how children grow up without father figures and how that affects them negatively, right? So again, men grow up desiring that male validation because they didn't have a father in their life. And I want to make sure we get out of that broken home syndrome where it's fatherless epidemic, where there's no men around caring about the children, right? So we have to try our best to prevent that from happening as much as possible. So yeah, I can go on about this a lot, but I don't want to. But yeah, I just feel like relationships, healing the Black family for me is a multi-layered process of, raising your consciousness, deprogramming from our conditioning from childhood, of course, and then taking a stance of community and collective well-being, and then stepping into that role of what I do will be beyond myself. That's it.
I agree. I think that just pretty much rephrasing what I believe you guys are getting at, I feel like it's a reconstructing the idea of like where people's place is in society, and deciding that like you don't, just because you have this genital doesn't mean this is your role in society. You can get in where you fit in and be of use to your community in whichever way you actually intrinsically are capable of doing. And like, I think it would take deconstructing from nuclear family, as y'all both said, but also deconstructing what community looks like. Like, I don't think community is ever going to look one way for one people. It'll probably really play out in a lot of different ways, but just have that fundamental understanding of like, if you want actual liberation and freedom, then you have to be willing to know that somebody will be there for you, but you also going to be there for somebody, like y'all was saying. So
yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm just gonna I don't want this to be too long, so I just want to just sum it up with this last question. If you were to describe, a successful revolution, what would that look like to you? So yeah, that'll be the last question for tonight, because I don't want it to be too long.
So I'll just answer really quickly. Sometimes I'm very like very far in the future in the way that I think.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'd say getting to a point where humans as a whole are not in a place of division, whether it be by religion, nationality, race, or any of that. I think that will ultimately be the only way to have a true revolution of, because I mean, at the end of the day, anti-Blackness is the pillar for which everything stands upon, along with, like I said, things like animal, liberation and stuff like that. Like, we would have to move past that to get to a point where we can truly exist. And so, as far as long term is considered, just true, like, one consciousness, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was saying this today, earlier on a phone call. And one thing we were talking about is, what does the ultimate utopic society look like? And my thoughts were ultimately a matriarchy, right? Where women are centered. I feel like that is the catalyst that will help get everything in its place of where it needs to be, right? When we ultimately, because I feel like that is according to how the universe works, that's cosmic order in my mind, right? Cosmic order, everything is cyclic, right? There's karma, there's things that we have to abide by that's outside of man-made law, right? So returning to cosmic law is respecting the earth, the animals, like you said, respecting each other, because at the end of the day, spirit is in all of us, right? Spirit is in all of us. And so when you look at another being, you should see divinity, right? So again, so for me, that catalyst that will change and get us on that path, because again, that is far off and in the future. I think the catalyst is just changing our inner dialogue, our inner perspective to a very woman-centered one. Creation, womb, babies, you know what I mean? All of that, make that your guiding light, your guiding principle, and things will tend to snowball, right? And things will get back to the cosmic order of how it's supposed to be, where we can let animals just live in the wild and not, hunt them to extinction. That's ridiculous. Or throw plastics in the ocean. Like, who told us that made sense? Like, just a lot of things just don't make sense. So I feel like doing that one thing, centering mother, then everything else will fall into place after that. That's my thoughts.
I think ultimately, until humanity gets to a place where like race is not a thing, separation would definitely be ideal for anyone who, particularly Black people. I don't know how much the average Black person actually want to be separated, but yeah, ultimately I would say, wait, before I finish, rephrase the question again, or restate the question again. Just
what does victory look like as far as a successful revolution? What does that look like?
As things stand now, I would say a bit of separation. Although I do think that we're shifting, like somebody said earlier, we're shifting out of race being such a big issue and going into class being an issue, and tying back in the TV and all of that. There's a lot of movies coming out about AI and companions and all this kind of thing. So the race issue might not be Black. It might be like our robot or something.
It
Us
might be
versus
organic versus artificial.
man versus the machine. So I think that ideally it would be a collective either separation based off race, which I don't think will actually ever happen, or we're gonna have to come together as like a people to choose. You're gonna have to, like, because some people want, a super technological world and all of that, and that's okay, for who it's okay for. But yeah, I think ultimately it would require separation as things stand now, and that separation also of mind, like-mindedness. So
Mm-hmm.
what frequency are you on? What's your belief system? Are you holding on to old ways, like old Abrahamic religions, that is quickly starting to show that it's not only not real for most people, it's going out the window, and it's becoming, as we become more intelligent, the animals are becoming more intelligent and are showing. And before I speak, because you had mentioned it earlier with like the animals and stuff like that, did y'all see the Wiki?
No, I didn't see that.
um I wonder how true that is about how animals at one time could speak. And because
Mm-hmm.
they put stuff in movies so much, I'm like, could animals
Oh
speak
no,
at one
I
point?
believe animals can speak. But again, I feel like animals speak now. Like you understand what I'm saying?
They do,
Like
they do.
like I have two cats, right? The reality is cats don't meow for themselves. They meow to talk to us. So they mimic what we would respond to, right? So they say meow, right? But they're really saying, give me my food now.
Right,
But
right.
but in general, like we have the ability to talk to our animals. Again, I think speech is symbolic, right? Not all the time it has to be English or any particular language. I feel like we are able to read social cues, body language, and also read energy. Like just reading your energy, I know what it is you're saying. So communication between humans and animals was a thing.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we didn't always speak English.
And I
I
think
believe
speech,
animals are telepathic.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was about to say. That's what I was about to
right,
say.
right.
I think speech is actually pretty primitive.
Yeah,
I
it is.
think telepathic speaking, like we do that now, like not only with our animals, when you kind of, they're not speaking English, but give me my food. I want to go outside. Like, why are we just sitting here?
Yeah.
Get up. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't care that you work. Like, but also with babies, with each other, like the saying that
Hmm.
black women, we cannot say anything and just be like,
And look, and I'll be like,
or
I know
make
exactly what you
faces.
said. Have a full conversation.
That's telepathic
Yes,
speaking. And honestly, my theory is if we stop talking so much, our telepathy would probably grow
it
if we
would.
stop talking.
It would. It definitely would. Like I'm one of those people who I believe in going into silence, and then you begin to hear, like whether it's messages or whatever. Like once you like, it depends on again your spirituality. Once you start taking away a particular sense, you start to see better. Like you know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. I feel like we communicate. Again, language is still new. You know, like the first writings was on tablets and Sumerian tablets, right? Before that, what did we have? Art. We had art, which means our language was symbolic then. Like, how do we communicate then? We don't have any anthropological evidence, but that doesn't mean that we didn't talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, absolutely. That to me is a part of going back to that mother principle and going back to life before colonization told us how to be. You know what I mean? Like getting back to all of our innate abilities, like being able to talk to each other, you know, and that requires accepting that connection and realizing that we're not truly that separate. We are that collective consciousness that you said. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that also plays into it. I think I actually made a TikTok about it a long time ago, trying to implore people to like, and kind of like what Black Panther was touching on around that time and stuff, like the fact that our current world is truly just shaped by colonialism. And I think like
Mhm.
everything that we talked about is encompassed in the fact that people don't recognize like this world could have gone so many other ways if them particular people didn't get on their boats and do what they did. Could have been
Mhm.
somebody else. It could have never happened. Like we
Right.
could have went so many ways, and this is just the one way that we did go. And I think that ties into so many things that we talk about, and even just answering the question of like that power of mind of recognizing like we
Mhm.
shape our reality, and the decisions that humans before us made have shaped our reality up to this point. But we can always decide where we want to go from here.
Right. And that's what we doing. deciding where we want to go from here. So yeah, no, I'm grateful for you guys. Most definitely coming tonight and diving into this subject. This is one of my favorite subjects. So I'm very passionate about it. And I look forward to, next week and, having some more matriarchs add their perspective to the whole thing. And then coming out of that with strategy, right? So I'm looking forward to that. But I thank you guys so much for, coming in and talking with me today. So
thank you so much for having me. You guys were so enlightening. All of your perspectives were so amazing. I'm very grateful for this.
Yes, thank you. And it's nice to meet you, Jada. I don't think hadn't been here before, right?
No, this is my first time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's nice meeting you too.
Thank you.
Yes, we love Jada. We love Jada. Yes, no, I think I am attracted to powerful minds in general. So I'm glad for all of you, to be honest. So yes, I'm ready to, put that work in for real. Yeah. So, yeah, thanks everybody for coming and watching today's panel discussion. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Remember that you guys should be checking the description for links to connect with these goddesses for their services and the things that they offer the community. Watch their content, support the movement, right? And also make sure that you guys are sharing this video, sending it to your friends, adding to the conversation. But thank you all so much for coming, and I'll see you all next week. Remember to worship the Yoni.